Today on Shift Happens, I'm honored to sit down with Laura Stewart, the brilliant artist and founder behind Unseen Forces Creative. Laura's work is all about capturing the unseen beauty, emotions, and forces that move through our lives. And her personal story is just as powerful. In this conversation, Laura opens up about her journey through battling breast cancer, how it changed the way she sees life, creativity, and purpose, and how she's challenged her experience into her art. We dive into what it means to truly trust the process and find beauty even in the most difficult seasons. Laura's story will remind you that sometimes the most powerful forces are the ones we can't always see, but can deeply feel. Laura Stewart, welcome to Shift Happens. I'm so happy to have you here. We both just got back from Stagecoach. We are rallying.
We've got dust on our boots.
Yeah, I'm like so dirty. I haven't even showered, honestly.
I know.
I like threw some makeup on today. I was like, all right, we are doing this.
We've got this.
So thank you so much for coming. We actually met. I had to like deep dive this to like prepare for the interview. 2013.
That's insane.
I was 23.
That's like a decade ago.
Yes, it is a decade ago. Isn't that wild?
I know. It really is.
And to bring everyone in, it was, I don't even know how I found this, but it was the weaving workshop. You guys, I don't even know if you really knew what you were doing then, but
no.
And neither did I.
Yeah.
But I just went to weave because weavings were really in, and you and your friend started a workshop business, if you will. And I remember I was starting the Shift Creative probably like a few months later or something, or I was like just getting into it or something like that. I know it wasn't launched yet. And I remember just taking that class. And then I did like some styles shoot for you at one point. And then now I like tap you on the shoulder for different brand events and installations because you're so amazing. And it's just wild.
It really,
how everything.
It's always been fun to kind of, I feel like we've always been parallel to each other,
but
like in a collaborative way. And I do remember you at the workshop. It was like, you were the one person who was like, I'm going to make this the best weaving I've ever made. I'm not leaving till it's done. And it was like, it was fun to see just your like creative expression, how like serious and passionate you were about it versus, other people who come, they're like, oh, we're just coming as like a friend to do something fun.
This is a craft.
Yeah, like whatever.
Yeah,
but you were just like, I'm weaving and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to make this cool.
You totally stood out as like someone who was there to just learn and be the best that you could be. And ever since then, I feel like we've just been connected in like the
for sure and the installation,
ways.
Art world, and it's been cool. It's been so fun to like see us do this because like literally we didn't know what we were doing. We're just trying things out.
No,
and that's like what creatives are, like do.
Totally.
It's like we aren't experts until we fail and then practice and then see what works and then then we can make beautiful things that people pay us for.
Yeah. And I think that's what probably has kept us both in that sort of same trajectory of saying yes to everything. It's like, can you do this? Sure.
And then that can get us in trouble.
And then you're Googling it, like, how do I do this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You have no idea how many times a client will be like, can you make this slide up and spin? I'm like, yeah. No idea how to do it. I have like zero idea.
Or how much it costs. Or how much time it's going to
take. I think it will be about this much. It's like, as a creative, you have to learn the business side of things.
Totally.
That's the struggle. But what led you to start what was formerly called Laura Made It? Now it's Unseen Forces Creative. What was the initial spark there?
I think it was just my path of working for corporate and working at Anthropologie for so long, doing their window displays. And then I had my kids and it was like, how do I still be creative, but still have time at home and make my own schedule? Did not work to work for someone else's schedule and work, 8-hour days, but I still knew I had that drive inside of me to like still create. And I think same thing, like saying yes to things just led me down this path of, sure, I can do that. And then it just snowballs and you kind of just are along for the ride.
This is a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm like, this is where I'm being led also. And so I think it is a little bit of a testament of having faith and knowing that wherever you're going, you're going to end up where you're meant to be.
Yes,
you know?
I totally believe that
and
too.
So there was never any resistance to it. And it was like, can you make a chalkboard? Sure, I'll make a chalkboard. And then that led to the next thing. And it's always building on the last project. And every time I get something new that I haven't made, I'm like, this will be great for the future. You know, when I'm like, okay, now I know. And someone's hiring me to kind of R&D this idea that I've also been imagining, you know? And so getting an opportunity to make something, no matter what it is always so many layers of just the creative process. Like
Absolutely.
I feel like that's actually the most important part. But then also seeing what you've made and been like, I did that.
And then proud of yourself too.
Yeah.
You're like, this
and
is
as being a woman, I remember being at Home Depot or something, you know, and it's like, oh, I have to go to Home Depot. I have to deal with the men, you know, like, do you need help with that? Or giving me their 2 cents of how they would, oh, what are you making? And then you tell them and they try to tell you how to make it. And you're just like, yeah, I know, you know.
Or sometimes you don't know. I remember at the beginning, I didn't really know much, but I was like kind of pretending like I did because I didn't want to look stupid.
Totally.
But then now you know, and you're like, oh no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I just need, or actually, if you want to lift all these plywood pieces, that would be great.
I was going to say, now I'm on the other side where before I was like, I don't need help. I'm going to do this all alone. Yeah. Because I can. Yeah. And like, now that I've proven it was more for myself, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, now that I've proved that to myself.
Actually, I do need. Yeah.
Can we or I'll walk out to my truck and look around and be like, is anyone gonna, you know, like I'm actually looking for the men who are like, hey, let me help you.
Yeah.
You know,
for real.
And I think that being an independent woman who also is like, I'm gonna build this myself. I'm gonna get out the power tools, you know, and just have my arsenal and feel empowered by that. But then I also think that, you know, men also offer that balance. Where with Laura Made It, I also am very passionate about hiring other women.
Yes.
So, and that's
I like that for you and me too. Yeah. We are very
like we're always very like feminine and empowered and like doing our thing. But then it's like I also want to be respected, you know, by men. Yes. And then they should step in on carrying the plywood. You know, like we don't need to break our backs anymore. No. Putting plywood in the truck.
Girl, we're talking the same language. I know. Trust me, it is a challenge. Yeah, it's so hard to have like an only female team. So I mean, like I had outsourced like and hired a lot of men because I was like, I don't want to be breaking my back anymore. Yeah, you know. With being creative, I know you were saying like, okay, yes, like I'm going to take on, and I'll say yes. And I know sometimes when you're first starting out, especially, we could be yes men, yes women. What makes you want to say yes to a brand or a client that you are going to create for?
I think it's like a gut feeling. You know, when I see, they'll kind of usually send an email and they'll explain their brand a little bit or what their vision is. And if I can see the vision, then I know that I'm right for the job. You know what I mean? If I can see it in my mind, what they're going for, I know that I can execute that. But if I'm having a hard time, like really understanding and I can't see it, it's a little bit more of a process for me to know if I'm going to say, you know, I have to feel it out a little bit more.
And would you say too, like sometimes it's like the client, if you're talking to them on the phone and you're like, this seems like you might not be a great client. Like
there's a lot of red flags. Right. I've learned over the years of like, oh, that's a red flag in an initial conversation. Yes. Where then I know either I'll still say yes to the project, but there'll be more boundaries up front because I can already see ahead. Like, okay, they talked about budget or something, you know, way too many times.
Where and then they're not clear on their vision. Yeah. Now we're doing a million revisions. Yeah. But I didn't charge for that because we didn't talk about that at the beginning. Like,
so it is a lot of intuition of like getting to know your client right off the bat of like, okay, are they going to be easy to work with? Are they going to micromanage? Yeah. Do they know what they want, but then they don't have the communication, like skills artistically to explain it? And I think that that's what time doing creative projects helps you with that language.
I agree.
So the more people that you're working with that are experienced and that can speak, it's like we have the same brain. You're like, I know what you're saying. Yes. Where certain people, you're just like, there's a disconnect and it's hard. And you're like, this is going to be a struggle. We can get through it.
But then also sometimes the struggle is beautiful because then you're like, okay, we did get through it and now I'm learning, you know? And sometimes it's like, again, as creatives, it's hard to implement systems. But then once it's, okay, now I know the right questions to ask.
Exactly.
Or now I know, like even just across the board with any client, so that way you don't run into those same things.
Yeah.
Because I have totally undercharged so many times, and then I'm there and I'm hand cutting fringe for,
totally
a month and hanging it up and have cuts on my hands and whatever. So,
Yeah.
and then you're like, that wasn't worth $5,000.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're like, I can only blame myself for that.
100%.
Because or you want to, what is that?
Overpromise.
Overpromise. Yeah.
Yeah. Or overdeliver. No, what is it?
Overpromise, underdeliver
Yeah.
is like my worst nightmare.
Worst fear.
I always want to be almost too much. Even when I'm ordering stuff on Amazon or stuff to bring or flowers or something, I'm like, I would rather have too many flowers and do something with them than not have enough.
The client's like, that's it. Like, this is like the flowers you're doing. Yeah.
But then when you promise something at a certain price, you're like, okay, well that
it's a rub. It's you have to find the balance. Yeah. I totally understand. So creatively, you're, phenomenal. You've worked with so many different brands, and we see a lot of that on your social media, right? The side of things that you've recently started sharing has been more personal, which you haven't really shared a lot of until 2023. You got a news that no one wants to hear. And so I want you to bring us into how you found out that you had breast cancer.
So I have the breast cancer gene.
Got it.
It runs in my family. Mm-hmm. So my doctors were very, it's very prominent in my mom's side of the family. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have a metric to, like, my aunt got diagnosed at 40 or 39. So 10 years before her diagnosis is when we're supposed to start getting tested. So I had been going in and getting screens every 6 months since I was 30. Oh, and so I was my doctor also was very on top of it. Okay. And so I had been screening, and it came up in a mammogram that I had something that wasn't, abnormal, I guess. And they biopsied it. And then when I got the call, it was actually, I had been waiting. It's like you're waiting for that call.
Yeah.
And I was trying to just stay present of like, whatever it is, I know I can manage. But she actually, and so my son was playing with my phone in the car. And so me and my kids were in the car and he had my phone. And I was like, if a number rings, like, give it to me. I need to answer it. I've been waiting. Yeah. And it rings and he instantly ends it. And inside I get so frustrated. I'm like, you ended the call. Like, I told you not to do that. And I get him to we're on his way to his drum lesson. And so he gets out of the car. And then the number called back and I answered it. And I'll never forget, I was like outside of his drum lesson. And it's just so amazing how it would have been on speakerphone, basically. If he would have let me answer the call. The first time, it would have been on speakerphone in the car with both my kids. And so this way I was actually able to like get the news away from them, but I was still with them. So it was like 30 minutes of a lesson and I get the news, and then my daughter's like in the car. And in that moment I was like, what do I do? Like, do I say, my daughter was the first one that I told and she's 16. And I was just like, how did you tell your daughter? I just said because she knew I was waiting for the results. So I was like, they came back as cancer, and we kind of worked it out for a minute. Her and I were very close. She's also very creative. And so we share that kind of spirit, Yeah. And so putting myself in her shoes of like, she's my girl, like she's my bestie. Yeah. And it was like, I think I would want to know. And so I was like, it's cancer. And she had her like freak out moment. And then together we were like, do we tell your brother who was 10 or 9 at the time? And he gets in and he just knew. I think we didn't tell him, and we're driving and a song came on and I just started crying. And he was like, what's wrong? And I just looked at him and I told him. And we all had a minute where we all cried together, and I was like, we're going to be okay. And then I asked them how they wanted to, like, do you want to know everything? Do you want me to kind of, and they were like, no, we need to know everything. So anytime I would cry, they would come over and sit next to me and be like, what's wrong? What's happening? Yeah. And so it was, I think, radical, like, honesty was my approach with them. Because also watching my mom go through cancer, she is like, strong as can be, like never showed us that she was in pain or
Yeah,
crying. I
yeah.
never saw her cry.
Really?
Like I saw her sick from the chemo, but I never remember her like
Mm.
saying, I'm scared, I'm feeling this
Mm.
way. It was very just like, this is what I have to do, you know?
Mhm.
And so I wanted to have my kids be more,
Maybe like humanize it a little bit more?
like let them see
Yeah,
what I was going through
yeah. How you
in
were
real time.
and how you were navigating it and how
Yeah,
you're not just their mom, but a person that is
totally.
going through this really scary, it is scary, a
Yeah,
scary time, you know, and
yeah,
I can imagine that communicating that with your kids and having those times with your kids actually made you guys closer
yeah,
and
definitely.
bond more, I would assume.
And it almost, I want to say, empowered them to show up for me.
Mm,
You know, like
yeah.
we're here together. We're on this journey together,
Mhm.
and it's not me always leading you.
Mhm.
And I think it really reversed those roles of like, I'm going to let the kids kind of lead me,
Mhm.
because what the cancer also brought me back to was like my child
Mm.
self, you know, and it was kind of this unveiling of my truest self
Mm.
and like getting rid of those layers that I have gathered and protected, you know,
Yeah.
that armor.
Yep.
I was had a very strong armor. And so having cancer was like, you need to
It
receive.
was almost like dismantling that, making you softer.
Yes. And
Because, yeah, like you were saying, in childhood, we learn so many coping mechanisms to protect ourselves because we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be abandoned. We don't, all of these stories that we tell
totally.
ourselves as a kid that we've either learned through our parents or relationships, they come out in adulthood,
Yeah.
right? And so now we're seeing you going through this time where now your kids are, it's almost like the cancer and your kids are softening you and
Yes.
allowing you to be safe in a way, even like in your vulnerability.
Totally. That was a
That's so
huge,
beautiful.
yeah, that was one of the big kind of shifts in my perspective
Mm.
was being vulnerable is actually the strongest thing you can
Yeah.
be. You know,
Yeah.
because especially with like we were saying before, like our line of work was so like, I'm going to do all this myself and I can
Mhm.
build and I can climb and I can do all these like empowering, like strong things
Yes.
where I didn't realize that being vulnerable was actually even harder for me,
Mm.
you know? And so if I could allow that to break me open, I felt like it would be a success
Mhm.
and would be worth it.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like, you know, when you first get diagnosed, they take you through all the pamphlets and all the things. It's
Yeah.
like, here's your take home binder with all the things about having breast cancer. And it's so like sterile and
Mm.
just sad, you know, where you're like, okay, this, if I have to see another pink gown, I'm going to like
Mm.
freak out. So I thought, I don't want to, and saying I'm fighting cancer just felt
Yeah.
so like in my body, I could feel it was like, that's not right. And so from the beginning, I was like, I'm going to love my cancer
Mm.
and see how that can take me
Well,
through.
how interesting. That's a really interesting perspective and take on it.
So it
Huh.
was like instead of having that resistance in your body
Mhm.
to something, you know, you think cancer, I want to get it out. I want to get it
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
that's how we treat it. But I was like, what if I just embrace it
Mm.
and love it? And I made I made my friend drive me to
Mm.
Joshua Tree
Mm.
after I had the biopsy,
Yeah.
after I found out it was cancer, but we didn't know if I was going to do treatment.
Mhm.
So we drove to Joshua Tree. There was like one of those meteor showers, and it was
Mhm.
like 3 a.m. And we're like driving, we're going to make it there. And we stop
Mm.
and we get out of the car and we're laying on the asphalt, like in the pitch black, just like watching the meteor
Mhm.
shower go. And I was just with music on, and I told her, I said, if at the end of this, if I could see my inner beauty, it'll all be worth it. Like if
Mm.
I have to do treatment, do the whole
Yeah.
thing, but if I can see my light and I
Mm.
connect to that, it'll be so worth it.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
just want to feel ourselves and feel connected
Mhm.
to something more.
Yeah.
And I felt like if that's what I could get out of this, it'll all be worth it.
Mhm. Yeah. Like,
And
what's
being
the
so
lesson?
young, it's like I have my whole life. I've been given this gift of mortality
Mhm.
where now I know on a cellular level that this is finite
Yeah.
and that it's a miracle that I'm here and it's a miracle
Absolutely.
that I'm in this body. And that's really all that
Mhm.
matters, you know, and everything else is just the nectar of it, of
Mhm.
life, you
Yeah.
know, and if I can just be in my light, that's it. And then
Yeah.
it'll just, I connect with who I'm supposed to connect
Exactly.
to. I have the conversations I'm supposed to have with people or
Mhm.
total strangers. People will walk up to you and just, you know, and
Yeah.
you leave
Yeah.
there going, That was my
part of
purpose.
it. That was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. When you were going through chemo, and I know that, everyone has that pivotal moment, right? Where, okay, I'm losing my hair.
Mm-hmm.
I have to shave my head now because that's just part of it. How did that feel for you? Was that liberating? And I say the word liberating for a reason, because you're talking about embracing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, and not like loving it, right? Is what you said. So in a way, when that happened, when that moment happened, was it liberating, or what were your feelings there?
I think it was the full spectrum of feelings.
Okay.
Like I don't think I held anger about it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't easy. I would never say that this was easy. And it felt like it was very interesting to see other people look at you. And it wasn't until that I stepped out of my house and saw how other people were looking at me was when I really started to feel like, oh my gosh, this is like
real.
Yeah, real. Because before, you go through, I had already had 2 surgeries, I had already started the chemo before I lost my hair. And I was still like, oh, I feel good. Like, this is
no
great.
One knows.
I've
I'm just living life.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But it was almost
you didn't
like
look
this,
sick.
Yeah, I didn't
quote
look
unquote,
sick.
right?
Right.
But
unless
now,
I told someone.
But now people are wondering.
Yeah. Or they're avoiding you.
Different.
And especially, being a woman, like you're walking down the street, people are looking at you, whatever.
Yeah.
This was like, oh my God, I don't like, it was like an
avoidance. They felt awkward.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a feeler. So I can feel people.
Me too. I'm so like about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you walk in, you're like, oh my God, they're uncomfortable. So then I'm uncomfortable.
And then you're feeding off their energy. You're
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a little bit of it, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. Like, this is the next step. But it was definitely the hardest, most like, I couldn't hide anymore. And even I've always had like somewhat short hair, but it's still there. But having no hair is this whole other like, oh my gosh, people can see me, And I think it was just that feeling of being seen. I was like, oh.
Was it scary?
Yeah, I have a fear of being seen.
Yeah.
And so what was neat about the whole experience is that it just kept uncovering. It's like, oh, you think you healed that? We're going to show you the next level of that, or like, you think you want to be seen, and then you're really put out there to be seen, and then you're like, oh my gosh.
I don't like this feeling.
Yeah. And so every day I was just like internal working on myself, like, what is this bringing up for you? This is sit down. I was like, something is saying, sit down, slow down.
Yeah.
We got work to do.
Alexis here. I'm just popping in to ask you, have you been through something painful and felt like your story could help someone else, but you're not quite sure where to start? I want to help you unpack your journey, find your voice, and turn your story into purpose that heals you and empowers others. Click the link in the show notes below to learn how to start sharing your story with boldness and clarity. And now back to another impactful story. Yeah. And it wasn't even about the cancer, really.
No.
It's so much more deeper than that. Yeah. My mom actually, she died of breast cancer at 32.
I didn't know that.
So I was 2.
Wow.
So she had breast cancer when she was pregnant with me. And so I had to get tested for this. So actually my grandma died of breast cancer. My mom died of breast cancer. And
I didn't know that.
And so that's why I related to your story a lot as well. And like, especially with kids.
Wow.
I was curious to hear your perspective on it, because my mom was taken by breast cancer, and I've, struggled with that too. But I don't have the gene. But however, I do have a daughter. So it's one of those things where she's going to have to get checked, and she's going to have to, but I bring that up because my mom would there's pictures of her wearing wigs and other things like that. And I know, she struggled with feeling feminine and from what my dad told me.
Yeah.
She struggled with the appearance part of things. And so were there ways that you embraced
oh my gosh. I made a Pinterest board of bald women.
You were
I was like, before I even shaved my head, I was like, this is, I go into like mood board making, and I was like, I'm going to make a mood board of like what clothes I'm going to wear.
You're like, I'm going to be the hottest.
I was like, how can I rock
cancer,
a shape? I got a tattoo on my
now.
neck.
You're like, what can I do to make me look? Yeah.
I left my oncologist appointment where he told me I had to do chemo, and I'm texting my tattoo girl, and I was like, I need a neck tattoo. I'm going to be bald. And she was like, come over tonight. She did my tattoo. It says Amor Fati.
What does that mean?
Which means love your fate. So it's like being in love with the journey. And I
that's
knew
beautiful.
that
that's
that. What I had to do. And it was like right here so I could see it every day. And I was just like, you got to be in love with it because then you're really, you're
gleaning from it.
Yeah.
You're
it's
learning,
like I
you're
am
growing.
learning. And I'm taking every nugget of this like experience to use it to then alchemize my greatest creation, which is myself.
Wow.
And then I pass that to my kids where it's like, we are creative beings.
Yep.
Every single thing we do during the day is art, or like every decision we make, we're creating our day. We're creating our experience. So I'm going to choose this mug that brings me the most joy to like have my coffee out of, or I'm going to put on this outfit because I feel like I'm in this mood today.
Were you always like that, or did the cancer?
I have always been like that, but I feel like the cancer brought me into my body more. Where before I was
you were
like
more in tune, like less just like, oh, I'm just doing this. More intentional,
more intentional in a way of like, just the fact that I get to drink this coffee is a miracle. You know, or like I would go to the gym and say, oh my God, the fact that I can get down and do a push-up, like we take that for granted.
Yes.
Or people are like, I do like group classes or whatever. And they're just like, I'm here showing up. And I just want to be like, the fact that you can show up and do a workout is a blessing because
you can move your body.
Yeah, you can move your body.
It's not sick. And we do. There was a trend on Instagram that I did recently where it was like, I woke up I'm 80, but I'm in a whatever your age is, right? I'm in 80. No, I am 80, but I woke up in whatever your age is body, right? And then it's like I woke up and it's like I didn't rush my kids out the door for breakfast, and I wasn't impatient with them because they're only little for this amount of time.
Right.
I went and exercised, and I was so glad that I was like able to move my body, and my knees didn't hurt.
Yes.
My back didn't hurt. I was able to, I don't even know, like wear that bathing suit and feel confident and didn't care about what my body looked like because now, you're 80, it's different. So like the whole trend is like you're 80, like that's not what it is anymore. Totally. So live your life how you want. So when you're 80, you can look back and say, I chose my life with intention.
Yep.
Intention's my word of this year.
I love that. So, I know when I was driving here, I actually stood outside and I just held like an intention for this podcast of like, it's not even about the words, but just that the conversation spreads the message that we want to share.
It will, because there's people that are listening and it doesn't have to be cancer. It could be anything. And it's, I love what you're saying about embracing. And that doesn't mean, I think that sometimes people confuse embrace with like, I want this, but it's not a want. It's not a wanting. It's this is what is going on right now. What can I do to embrace it? What can I do to learn? What can I do to utilize my pain?
Yeah.
And
it's almost like a blanket.
I
want to say like, when I think of embrace, I feel like it's like a hug or it's like a comfort. It's like we're not alone. And I think that that's also what I learned too, is that going through the most lonely experience because it's so like personal that no one can share in that with you. Yeah. Really. As much as you bring people in. But there were so many things that I connected with throughout every day. Yeah. Even just the woman like at the grocery store who would come up and ask, like, if they'd be like, I don't want to, and then they'll say their experience. Okay. So
it was a connector to other people.
Yeah. And I think that being so open and so raw, I was able to connect like right away. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't that weird, like, let me feel you out, see if you're safe. It was just like, this is what's happening. And then we would both be crying, and they would be like, thank you for sharing. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I was sharing. I thought it was just like having a conversation. But the level of connection when you're in that raw of a moment was so beautiful that I would just cry every day out of like the beauty of life itself. Like just the trees or just the color green is so incredible. And it's something that now I'm a year and a half out. It feels like I don't want that to fade.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How we all kind of just
what do you do to help it not fade? Because I think that it is, you know, like think about like anything. You hurt your wrist and you're like, oh, my wrist, I can't wait for my wrist to get better. You know, and then it gets better and then you forget that you ever had the pain. Yeah. So what would you say to help, you know, not let it fade? Yeah.
I think it's just like you said, the intention of every day. Like I start my day just with some sort of prayer or intention of like, this is the day. Like this is all that there is really, you know? And it's because I think when you don't have that gift of mortality, it feels like I have forever, or I have whatever, 20 more years.
Our life is a vapor.
Yeah.
It is a vapor. It will.
Like this is all that I have is this moment. So how can I be the best version of myself and the most authentic that I can be in every moment? And of course, there's times where I'm like, I'll even complain about my hair, where a few months ago I would be like, oh, I'm just grateful to have hair, you know? And then I'll catch myself in the mirror going like I'm wearing a hat today because I'm like, this hair is not working. But so I am human. Yeah. And so it's learning to give myself grace. And it's almost like I have now like two parts of me where I'm like, there's the part that knows, and then there's my human self. Yeah. And it's actually the part that knows now that I'm connected to her is being like, it's okay to be human. And it's okay to like be sad that your hair is absolutely curly from chemo and you don't like it. And that's cool. And just let it be instead of always trying to fix it. I think I was always trying to fix myself before the cancer. And I think having that voice in my head that's like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to be fixed. This is what it is to be human. And I'm still learning how to just really like be in that, especially with the world that we live in now. It's like we have so many reflections of like, this is what beauty is. This is what success is, you know, all these things where it's like, at the end of the day, I think a success for me is just being me. Yeah. And that's so hard to do. And that's what I'm trying to teach my kids. Yep. Our youth. It's like, oh my gosh, even being at Stagecoach, I looked around, I'm like, everyone's wearing the same outfit. Everyone's wearing the same version of a different outfit. It's true. You know, and I'm
guilty of it. But listen,
me too. I mean, I've got my boots on.
It's true. I mean, I honestly, I struggled at Stagecoach. I really did. And I felt when I put on my outfit, I was like, I look good. I look good. I look good. Whatever. No, I went there. I was like, I started feeling feelings of insecurity. Yeah. Like I was like, why am I feeling insecure right now? Like, I know. Why do I feel insecure? It was so crazy. But it's a great point.
I had that same feeling. But then I was thinking, gosh, no one's like taking this opportunity to stand out, you know? Or like, how would I stand out if I was choosing to? Or are we just trying to blend in? Some people just want to blend in, right? Because standing out is also being seen.
Yeah, that's true too. All I know is next time, sweatpants, sweatshirt, I don't even care. I'm going to just look ugly and put a beanie on because I was so cold. It doesn't even matter about how I looked. And then I got my little, next time, take a few pictures, call it good, and be done.
Totally.
But when we're talking about the thick of you being in this journey, and you kind of mentioned, you know, kind of like finding yourself in your light and stuff. What was the thing that you held on to the most while you were going through it? Was it your kids? Was it yourself? Did faith play a role in that? Like what did you cling to?
I think I clung to who I was becoming and just that beauty of being embodied and feeling like I'm not going to go through this and not be something, you know what I mean?
Like I was a butterfly kind of thing, like cocoon. Yeah.
And how it's uncomfortable. Yeah. Oh yeah. I had so many butterfly, like symbols too. I was very into like symbols, meanings. You know, when you're in those like crazy moments where you see a number and then you see it again and then you see it and you're like, it just like it makes you so excited.
Mean something like what's going on. Yeah.
That was every day, no matter what day it was like just all those days. So it was almost like, how do I hold on to that beauty and seeing through those eyes? I also say, like, it gave me new eyes to see. And so just to hold on to those and not get kind of set back into the old ways of keeping up with everything that's just, you can't help it. It's we're being bombarded with it, you know, and especially in LA. Yeah. We're not off grid on a farm, like chilling, you know?
Yep. No, it's so true. It is so true. How has this experience shaped your view at, like, as a woman, as a mother, and as an artist?
I would say as a woman, it's really helped me see how beautiful feminine energy is and like being a woman, how sacred it is, and that we really do have a responsibility to teach our daughters and even our sons that everybody is sacred, everybody is beautiful, and that we are all here for a purpose. And I think as an artist, now it's like, I only want to create things that make me happy inside. And even if it is for a brand, I'll find joy in that. Yeah. And every day it's like, what's going to bring me joy? Yeah. And some days it's going to be eating all red Starbursts.
For sure.
You know, and so, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And then there's some days you're making this amazing like mandala out of sticks and sand and like getting really excited about that. Yeah. And just being a kid, being on the ground, making something, you know, like I think it's just every single day finding stuff that makes me happy. Yeah. And that's literally as simple. Life is so much more simple than all the noise. And I think it's just staying grounded and being in my body.
I agree with that.
It's hard. As a creative, it's hard not to just be in la la land all the time. And through this, I am able to almost like bring that down more and be in my body in that and then live in that. Yeah. Instead of like the creation always being this separate thing from myself, it feels much more like this is me. And going back to the social media of like sharing a little bit more of my personal story has always been really hard for me. Like, again,
you're doing it. Though.
I'm slowly I'm like, it's okay. And again, those voices, every time I go, oh, should I post this? I don't know. The voice in my head goes, fuck it. Yeah. Sorry. No. Because, it's like, just post it. Yeah. Who cares?
Well, and then after you post it, what happens? People are inspired and people can relate. And there's freedom in the sharing of the story. Yeah. And there's healing in the sharing of the story. Yeah. Not only healing for you, but healing to others.
Totally.
You know, and that's why I totally believe in the power of storytelling, of sharing our stories. Yeah. Because it allows us to even be more free and more aligned with our purpose. And I know for my own self, when I don't share or if I've kind of hidden it or I don't really want to share now or like even when you feel that tug of like maybe I should share, I feel like there's a hindrance there. Like we're robbing ourselves and others of gleaning from our experience, of the gleaning really of the experience.
Yeah. And I always say, I'm like, if I could help one woman go through her cancer journey and bring that hope for them, then what I went through is worth it just for one person.
I agree.
And it's that ripple effect of like, if I can affect them, then they'll affect the next person.
And you don't even know who you're affecting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Like even people listening to this or anyone looking at your story, it could have been somebody that doesn't even follow you. Totally. And their life was impacted. Yeah. And I think that is like going back to like you saying like embrace the cancer. Like that's also like an outcome of it as well, is that ripple effect. Yeah. Of that embracing. Totally. You know? Yeah. For those that are listening to the podcast that might have someone in their life that just got diagnosed with cancer, what would you say was the most helpful thing for you during that time from the people that you loved?
Honestly, it's like the text of thinking about you, or it's the holding space, I think is what I learned the most through this is like, just come over and sit on my couch with me. Like we don't have to talk about anything.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about cancer either.
You don't need to bring food. You don't need to bring things. Like I just don't want to feel alone. And I think everyone's I think about this a lot of how like my sisters had their experience and my mom had her experience watching me.
Yeah.
You know, where I forget like she's got her life where she's like, oh my gosh, my sister has cancer. But I'm thinking because I'm the one with cancer, it's
only affecting me. Yeah.
So I think that just sharing in it and being honest is the most, people are afraid to bring it up.
Yeah.
And the people who weren't, I had the most like beautiful relationship, or we got, you know, deeper from it.
Yeah.
It's more of the people who are like, oh, I don't want to bother you. Like,
is this too much? Or like, are you like, yeah.
It's just like, I'm here, you know, or my sister texted me and said, let me know what you need. And so,
which I like that too.
Yeah. But then I'm like, I don't know what I need.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, I don't know what I need. I literally can't put into words what I need.
So you would prefer someone just to maybe come and just sit, watch a show.
Yeah. Be normal.
Don't need to be, yeah.
You know, because you're going to doctor's appointments all the time. You're thinking about it all the time. So it's almost
sometimes
like,
it's good for distraction.
Yeah.
Even. Yeah.
So, and everyone has their role, you know, where it's like some people who have been through it, then I'll go and do it with you because you know, and we're connecting in that way.
Exactly.
But it's just, I think knowing, at least for me, if I were in that place, I'm like, I'm here. I'm going to show up. If you ask me, I'll be there.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But just knowing that you're there and that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Sending little things, you know?
Yeah. Just check-ins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think art had a lot to do with my coping, I think. Or I realized I was driving here thinking, wow, I really leaned on art to get me through, and art that I don't even make, like poetry, you know?
I love that.
Andrea Gibson, I was reading all of their books, listening to YouTube's.
Yeah.
Their poems are just incredible. And I went to a lot of concerts. So I had one friend I'd be like, we're going to this concert, and I'd throw on a pink wig and we are going, you know?
That's so fun.
So I was at concerts throughout my whole, like I didn't hide and sit and be like, I have cancer. I can't do anything.
I can't do anything. Yeah. You were like, if I have this, we're living it up.
Yeah. We're living it up.
Life.
And we're laughing about it.
Yes.
And we're just, you know, like,
yeah,
we're going to go out. We're going to have fun. Do crazy things that my doctor was like, don't tell me that.
Oh my God.
All the nurses thought I was hilarious because I would come in and be like, guess what I did this weekend? And they're like, who does that? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. And so even with our art projects, people were like, are you not going to work? And I was like, no, I love what I do. And it's actually therapeutic. Like, because I had been doing it for work for so long, it kind of became work, you know? And then while I had cancer, when I got a job and I had to make something, I was like, thank you. This is like therapy to me.
Exactly.
And
art is therapy.
Yeah.
Art is therapy.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes initially it's always like fun as a creative. It's fun, it's therapeutic. And then though, when business starts picking up, sometimes it's not that fun anymore and you lose the art of creating. So I hear you saying like in this though, you kind of got back to that, like creating even if you got paid for it, like that beauty, that therapeutic end, that side of things that we all experience when we first start, you know?
Totally.
Sometimes we can kind of lose it in the business.
Yeah. For sure.
And so I think that's so beautiful that you were able to like connect back to that. And that you did, like imagine if you stopped working completely. Yeah. Then you're going through cancer. Now you're not working. And a lot of us, we wrap our identity in our work as well. Not that that's a great thing, but we do.
Totally.
And it is an outlet for us. So I love to hear that side of things, that it's not just like, well, I got sick and I have to derail my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it, like you said, it just brought me back to that place of why we make art to begin with, you know? And so now I can work and I can also see the beauty in it. Like, you know, if I'm setting up a candy bar and I'm shopping for the candy, I walk out of the candy store going, I just got paid to shop for candy.
Yeah.
Like how amazing is that? You know? And so it's like those present moments of constantly being like, I just went to the flower mart and was surrounded by these beautiful flowers. I'm creating.
Yeah. And I'm getting paid to create. And it's therapeutic for me as well. And I get to bless other people with my creations and they're inspired by that.
Right. Yeah. And so instead of it feeling so much like this is my job or, you know, I feel like now that's my blessing is I get to be creative and be supported, you know, in that. And I feel like the luckiest person in the world to like be doing that, for a job.
Yeah. No,
and it also
understand.
solidified like, this is what you're meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before I would kind of like teeter back and forth, like, do I want to keep doing this? Because it takes a certain amount, like, kind of person to be an entrepreneur, to be a creative, to be an artist, and to have like support a family doing it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like, it takes a special breed.
And I think that people think that it's an overnight thing when it takes years.
Yeah.
To be able to support yourself.
Yeah.
Totally. With it.
Yeah. And all the things that even to this day,
mm-hmm.
you've been doing it for whatever, 10 years. Every project has something where you're like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. Or,
oh, girl, I know.
It's like, there's a problem. We're going to find the solution. And I think before it was like, oh gosh, sometimes a 9-to-5 sounds really nice.
Oh, I still think that. I'm like, maybe I should go get a 9-to-5 and like just have that,
just
like
clock out.
Yeah, I would be like, I would be the best employee.
Yeah.
Because when you own your own business, like you cherish employees that are like good.
Totally.
And like I would be a good employee. I would take initiative. I would do all these things if I had the 9-to-5.
Yeah.
I know. But then I would also hate it. So
I know. So that's why I was like, okay, is this my redirect?
Yeah,
is this my chance to kind of like see what else?
Yeah.
And it was like anytime that I would get a job and I would make something, I felt so, it was like a relief, and I would forget that I was sick because I was in my work again. And I was like, wow, this is really, and whether it's this or later on, being in some sort of art therapy where I can facilitate that for other people, it's just kind of opened my eyes to the different modalities of like,
I love that,
what I can make or what I'm creating. But at the same time, I know I'm not in charge. And so I'm always like, use me however you want to use me. And whatever happens is what's supposed to, as long as I'm following my heart with
exactly.
it,
So in the use me type of scenario, as we wrap up, what would you say to people that might be struggling to turn their pain into purpose? And we talked a little bit about like you showcasing, a little bit of your story on social media, or you even coming on the podcast. And I know some of this feels uncomfortable, like because you're not used to sharing as much.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like if someone is, wanting to find purpose in what they're going through, if it's cancer or if it's something else, where would you encourage them to start?
I would say being vulnerable with yourself, being honest with yourself and where you're at, and really looking at like, what is this pain for me?
Yeah.
Because I think when the more inward you go, the more naturally it's going to touch somebody else's life. Where if I'm speaking authentically, it's going to spark in you what you're going to get out of it. But if I'm just reading, I always say there's something so different about learning something like from a podcast or reading a book, like a self-help book or something, and you're like, oh yeah, I understand that. And then you go and tell that to somebody. It's just, it doesn't resonate the same as when you actually lived it.
Yep.
And then you share it. And so I think that when you get really honest with yourself about like, what is this pain? Like what's coming up for me in this pain? And really sitting with that and actually, like I said, like embracing it. Like, this is my pain blanket and I'm going to wear it for a minute and I'm going to see what happens and see how I feel. And it's actually just the other side of the coin in a way, where it's going to resonate with somebody. And so then that naturally will just unfold, I feel like, to share your story if you're open to sharing it.
Exactly.
And I think that that's like because
sharing,
I'm not hiding from myself.
Exactly.
Right?
And sharing doesn't have to be on a podcast or on a stage.
Oh yeah.
It could be the closest people. It could be a stranger at the grocery store, right?
Oh yeah.
It can be anyone, and it's powerful.
The amount of people I've cried with, just like total strangers, and they're always like, I'm so sorry. They come up thinking they're kind of comforting me. And then it turns out to be like, this was for both of us.
Yeah.
And we're both crying and now I love you. I would leave people that I never met, that I know I'll never see again, and be like, I love you.
I love that.
I just, I used to be so afraid of being like, I don't want to say I love you to someone. That's a little bit too, like your close circle. You'll be like, love you, whatever. Now I'll just be like, I love you. I don't care. Like, I don't care who knows it,
Mm.
you know, where before I'd be like, ooh, how's that going to feel for them?
Mm-hmm.
Because of being like a feeler or an empath. Like, you don't want to make anyone else feel uncomfortable because you want to feel comfortable.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
Where now it's like, I don't care if they're uncomfortable. I'm going to tell them now because who knows?
Yeah.
You know, everything I do is like, this could be the last thing I make.
And,
or this.
And who knows when the last time they even heard I love you.
Yeah.
Right.
This is true. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, for coming on, for taking the time out. And I know that people that are listening are going to be encouraged and blessed by it. And we will have Laura's information in the show notes so that you can give her a follow as well. You can see all of her beautiful art installations.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay.
So fun.
Thank you for listening to Shift Happens. You are the reason I started this podcast. I hope it finds the ears and hearts of those who need it so that you know your voice matters and you are reminded that someone needs to hear your story. As always, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And I'll see you next week.